And also some big names that are actually injured as of last week in Cincinnati. So let's go have a look at the withdrawal list for the ladies. So we have a couple of players not playing on the WTA side. Shelby Rogers, she's pulled out. Krunic, Zong, McNally, and Simona Halep have all pulled out of the US Open. Of course, Simona Halep still waiting on her trial, whether or not she'll be able to play tennis in the near future. She's still waiting for the verdict. Over on the men's side, there's a lot more injuries to bigger names. Starting with Ema, who's out suspended. Struff, he's struggling still with injury since the clay court season. Nick Kyrgios, still troubled by injuries this year. Carina Busta, Opelka, Cilic, Shapovalov, and Batista Agut all out of this one. There's some big names there and also some fan favorites not going to be playing at this year's US Open. Now going over to the injury concerns, because there are some big names and serious contenders at the US Open that have got some injury problems. Starting with Holger Rune. Here's a back problem that he had to pull out of last week's Cincinnati Open. So we'll see whether or not he gets to the US Open. Of course, he's the 4th seed as well, so one of the serious contenders. Elena Rybakina, she's been troubled by a shoulder the last couple of tournaments and had to withdraw last week. And when she's healthy, we know that she could definitely win the US Open. So another player in contention in trouble. Federer, he had to pull out of his match against Djokovic, also with a back problem, and can be a dangerous player as we've seen over the years. Jabeur also injured with a foot problem. She got through a match against Sabalenka last week, but wasn't the same player once the foot was hurt, so we'll keep an eye on her. Hashanov, he had to pull out of Wimbledon and hasn't played since the French Open due to injury, which seems to be a hip problem. Of course, made the semi-finals here last year. Paula Badosa, she's had a back problem for the majority of the year and still hasn't been able to play much tennis. So some big names there and some serious contenders at this year's US Open under a big injury cloud. There it is, the players that are not playing the US Open and the players to maybe keep an eye on this week, because I'm sure one or two of those players will withdraw over the next couple of days. Hopefully not the big names, but someone like a Badosa, even Hashanov, they could pull out next week because they haven't played much tennis over the last couple of months. But let me know down in the comments below, who are you going to miss the most out of the US Open? Of course, Rafa's not playing. He's not on the list because we all know that he's not playing for probably the rest of the year. So I didn't put him on the list. But who are you going to miss from the US Open this year? There's some big names. Of course, Nick Kyrgios, he was so exciting last year's US Open. He beat Medvedev at the US Open. So let me know down in the comments below, who are you going to miss the most at this year's US Open?